Hi everybody. Unexpected kind of update for you because I had some bowel issues this week that probably should share. So I woke up on Thursday morning with a little bit of kind of what would be stomach ache for most people, like all through the abdomen. And sometimes I've noticed since this has happened, if I've had food that doesn't agree with me, which is far more common now, just because after I had the operation, I detoxed and my bowel was like in really tip-top shape. So sometimes when I eat a lot of certain foods that I didn't have right at the beginning through my detox, like if I have a lot of meat or dairy, sometimes it gets irritated much easier and it's a bit more sensitive. So anyway, I'd thought maybe I'd eaten something in the previous couple of days that had just irritated it. So I kind of just worked on as normal, and I was getting like waves of pain, where I could feel that my bowel was contracting. And the only reason that I know about that is because that's what was happening when I had my bowel obstruction. My intestines were relaxing and contracting to try and shift, everything that was in my bowels through, but it couldn't move because it was blocked because of my tumour. So it was a very similar feeling in terms of the pain. I kind of made dinner for Stacey and I sat down to eat at 8:15, and it just was starting to get too sore that I just didn't want to eat. So I went up to lie down on the bed and it became absolutely excruciating pain, pain I've never felt before in my life, to the point that I was like crying out. And we spoke to my folks and decided to call an ambulance, but the ambulance service is completely overloaded in Scotland, so we arranged to get a lift into the hospital. And about 5 minutes before we left, I was sort of leaning on the banister upstairs when I felt something move down on my right hand side, and it made kind of like a sort of thump noise, and the excruciating pain disappeared. It was still sore, but the crying out pain level of pain completely disappeared within 30 seconds. But we decided still to go into the hospital just to get things checked over, because it's never happened to me before, and I was just conscious. I had a bowel obstruction that was caused by a tumour before, and I needed to get reassurance that it wasn't anything as sinister as that. So I went into the hospital, had an x-ray, and here's a first for you. They wanted to have a look at my stoma and a bit more closer than through the bag. So I took the stoma bag off, got it all cleaned up, and I got a finger in the stoma hole for the first time, like right in. The registrar was like, "This might feel a little bit weird," and I was just like, I didn't look because it made me feel a bit bokeh, and a bit sick. So I just let him do what he needed to do. He said it all felt fine. Good news is my x-ray was clear. They kept me in overnight just to monitor things, and also I didn't say my stoma hadn't had any output for the whole day on Thursday, which is very unusual, both waste and wind. I hadn't literally had anything, so they kept me in just to make sure whatever had changed before I got into hospital stayed the same, and that the stoma was able to start working again. So eventually got to my sort of hospital bed about think 2:30 in the morning. I'm yawning just thinking about it. And managed to sleep through until about 7, and then I got discharged later in the day. So the long story short is I wasn't that great. It was absolutely excruciating pain, nothing like I've ever felt before. I thought, oh man, it was just horrific. And then something moved and it went whoomp. And then the pain was like gone within 30 seconds. Scans were good. So they've said it can really be a couple of things, and they can't really ever tell for sure because everything in the x-ray looked normal. So my surgeon, who interestingly enough was my surgeon from the beginning of the year, he was the consultant on Friday. So he said sometimes if you've had an operation on your bowel and there's scar tissue, excuse me, that's because I have barely got any sleep, or I did get sleep, but I didn't get sleep till 2:30 in the morning. So my surgeon said if you've got scar tissue in your bowel, it can just sometimes tighten. It can become a bit sticky, and it can sometimes cause the bowel to become a little bit twisted, or just end up in a position that means that there's very little flow through the bowel itself. So that's one option that might have happened to me, and through my bowel contracting and expanding, for a couple of hours where it was absolutely excruciating, wherever I was at the time that it thumped back in to normal position, for whatever reason, it just did that spontaneously. And that's actually what my discharge letter said, spontaneous. Or if I've eaten something that didn't agree, and it's, there's certain foods that take a lot longer to digest. So things like meat, some dairy products, and if you had like a whole mass of like masses and masses of nuts that's quite a high fat content but have a lot of fibre and need to be broken down, sometimes, if you eat a lot of those foods and you're not used to, like me, it can block, it can be a hard stool, and it can cause a little bit of a blockage. Now, I've been eating super healthy, so I don't think it was anything that I ate, and my gut feel, no pun intended, is it was just related to something's got a little bit twisted, but it managed to right itself in the end, thank God. So that was another little trip to the hospital, which I'm glad it only lasted for less than a day. And it basically, ever since that happened, as in it whumped back into place, everything's been great. I was back on the bike this morning, had Leo the 6-month-old golden retriever pup. I need to introduce him to you all, actually. He's been my therapy dog the last 3.5 months. So had him out for a walk early this morning, was on my bike for a couple of hours later in the morning, and just cracking on with the house to-do lists and stuff, seeing as it's the weekend, and then chilled tonight with some friends. We had a digi dinner, so back to business, back to normal, like it never even happened. So hopefully it was just a one-off, but it just makes me even more determined to make sure that I'm eating healthy, and that I'm not kind of mixing up my food groups too much, because I have noticed if I stick to, so if I'm having like a salad, it's better for me to just have the salad and the vegetarian foods, rather than like meat and carbs and veg and different food groups seem to cause me more issues a couple of days later than if I just keep it to one or two food groups, you know, for that day. So that's the latest on that kind of stuff. I got a couple of videos for you over the next few days. I'd promised them a little bit earlier, the last video, but I had the hospital stuff and I was in Bristol for a couple of days with work, so I've not been able to sit down and do the videos I'd intended quite as quickly, so I'll catch you up over the next couple of days. We've got the cancer, first cell cancer cell, where it comes from. I've got a little marginal gains for you, and a follow up on my local foods after my supermarket rant about not being able to find any British fruit and veg at all in my local supermarket a couple of months back. So I've got a follow up on that one too for you. So yeah, I'll catch up with you on the next video. But the good news is my minor spontaneous bowel obstruction sorted itself out, all good, and I am back in business.